Good afternoon, folks, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to Fun MMA Sucka Podcast, where we've been talking about judging for 20 years, and it will never end. Frazer Krohn, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm all good. It's good to be back talking all things wrong with MMA with you. You know, I did the solo pod, a quick one last week, talking about TUF. A couple of numbers have come out about TUF actually, that I saw this morning. Drastically down in comparison to when McGregor last did TUF. The it's not pay-per-views. It's sort of, viewing figures are drastically down. I'm not sure if that takes into account, BT Sport in the UK was where it said. I watched it on Fight Pass on the day after. I think it was on the Thursday I watched it. But it's worrying times, when you've got the biggest star in the sport returning against someone that is guaranteed fireworks in Michael Chandler, and you're still not getting the views for TUF. I'm not quite sure. To be honest, I think it's a TUF model. I think people have really gone off the TUF model, but we'll see. The next episode is out. I think it's out every Wednesday, isn't it? So it'll be out tomorrow. We're recording this on the Tuesday, so yeah, it'll be out tomorrow. I like the concept of veterans versus sort of young up and comers, as it were. Mm-hmm. I like McGregor in that environment, especially, and I think Michael Chandler will be a great coach.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I skipped through a lot. The first episode, I don't really care about their backstory, the fighters' backstories, unfortunately, because we know what, Roosevelt Roberts fought in that first fight. We know about Roosevelt Roberts, how, he's a good, solid fighter, and he was on the back end of some sort of bad decisions. I don't know who will be fighting this upcoming week, but I'm excited to see Lee Hammond in there for sure. I think he's my pick to. I don't know who wins. Nobody really knows who wins.
Right.
But my pick is Lee Hammond to do really well. He should do really well. Although he is matched up, I think it's with Kurt Holbach. It's a tough fight, but it's the matchups are what intrigues me. I don't care about these guys. How they're there's a bit of a rivalry inside the house. Of course there is. They're all fighters. And whether the second episode will take off a little bit more after the first episode, I think, it's going to be difficult to push. We're coming off the back of what we'll talk about in a second. Is it a controversial decision? Yes. Is it a robbery? We'll discuss that a little bit. It's a close decision. Coming off a lot of, Jim Miller's knockout, for example, that was an excellent performance. So we're having the breakaway and the sort of review from that. We've got the preview for the UFC's return to Canada. And still going to try and push TUF in the middle of all of that. I think, it's going to be tough to push TUF, but we'll see how it goes this week, and we'll try and get some viewing figures.
Well, even in when The Ultimate Fighter was doing Rampage versus Rashad, at that time we were saying the model of The Ultimate Fighter is dated. It is too old. It was old 10 years ago. And now we're 10 years on from that, and the model is old. We don't watch reality TV. The biggest reality TV show was the Physical 100 for our generation, and that had no drama in the background at all. Those were just people kind of competing, and it was over edited, and that's fine. But I think there was a better model that they could have gone with. But I will also say that for TV numbers, viewing habits have changed. People are watching it digitally now. People just straight up don't watch reality TV like they used to. So lower numbers, yeah, it's probably very concerning, but unless we see the Fight Pass and ESPN numbers online, we don't know what it's like. But yeah, what was I going to say now? I think there was a better model than this of we all know Dana White's Contender Series, where he brings in 30 guys to fight. Why didn't they just do Conor McGregor's guys fight Michael Chandler's guys? They can recruit their own 30 guys, fight Michael Chandler's 30 guys. We'll coach them for a season. I don't know. We just want to watch fights, Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, we've essentially touched on that with, I think it came out last week or maybe the week before with Octagon FC. Octagon is doing that with Team Britain versus Team Ireland. Brad Pickett is one of the coaches with 4 inexperienced, for want of a better word, British guys against 4 inexperienced Irish guys. They're just going to fight off. Yeah. Absolutely fine with that. And no one's expecting them to be, oh my God, this guy could beat John Jones. This guy could beat this guy could beat Amanda, or this girl could beat Amanda Nunes. It's just, it's a fun format of Britain versus Ireland. That's a fun format, and like you say, we just want to see fight.
Yeah.
No one's tuning into The Ultimate Fighter for the reality. They're tuning in to see, let's be honest, how McGregor and Chandler interact, how McGregor is as a coach, because we know that Chandler will put everything into this, but how McGregor is as a coach, it's already trending not great, to be honest.
Yeah.
And how he coaches both before and during the fight, interesting, and the result of the fight and the fight itself. No, you know, Uriah Hall's crazy spinning hook kick knockout on TUF. No one, everyone remembers that. No one remembers the I don't know exactly. This is my point. I can't remember anything about that series other than the spinning hook, and that kind of the point I want to make is, people are in it for the fights. They're not in it for the drama and the reality. So it's like you say, it's a dated format, but let's just hope that going forward, they maybe learn that. I think they've really tried to up the sort of tough game with getting McGregor in there, but I'm not sure how well that's worked.
But now, with the other big question in the room, is this fight actually going to happen? It's not even signed yet. It's been months and months and months. Dana White says, look, these guys are tough to sign. It seems like everyone's saying Conor McGregor simply isn't going to fight. What do you think? Is Conor going to make it to the octagon?
No, I don't think so. I really don't think so. Conor McGregor, there's still a market out there for Conor McGregor fights, for sure. Of course.
Yep.
I don't think it's against Michael Chandler, who is a very tough fight for Conor McGregor. It's a very difficult fight for McGregor to come back, coming back from a leg break against a guy who doesn't take a step backwards. That leg's going to be tested for as long as it lasts. And, there are, like I say, there are fights out there for McGregor. The sort of Cowboy Cerrone fight at the time arguably made a little bit of sense, but you've got, Nate Diaz 3. You've got, you had, before he retired, a Jorge Masvidal fight. These bigger money for, Michael Chandler's a big money fight, but it's not a Nate Diaz 3 fight. It's not, even back in the day, a Jose Aldo rematch. It doesn't make the money that I think it will. But also, just going back to touch on TUF quickly, the fact that they're now doing TUF from the Apex, it waters down these Apex cards like the one we had this weekend even more, because you're watching it on a Wednesday night with sort of guys that aren't even in the UFC.
Yeah.
And then you're watching two of the top, 8 flyweights in the world in the exact same octagon. 3 weeks later, man, I don't know when TUF finished filming, but 3 weeks later, it really waters down the UFC Fight Night cards from the Apex, because you're seeing it's essentially a local show, a regional show, in the exact same arena with the exact same, setup, filming, crew, cast members. You've got a little bit of a few audience members, as it were, but it really waters it down for me.
Oh, well, major cosign with that. And I had a post on Instagram and people were saying, like, just don't like the Apex. Instagram has the worst set of commenters I've ever seen in my life. But people were saying, like, you just don't like the Apex because you can't afford tickets. Bro, that's not it. I don't care how much people spent to get in the arena. That doesn't add anything to the ambiance. And we just had KSW this past weekend at the exact opposite end of the Apex. The Apex has 200 people in it, no ambiance. KSW was doing 50,000 in a stadium in Poland. We're talking about people chanting. There's lights, there's fire, there's crazy things going on all the time. And it was amazing. It was electric. It harkens back. It's crazy that the KSW is the one where we're talking about, like, Pride did this number, K1 did this number, KSW did this number. Like, KSW is doing this. The ambiance, the excitement from the audience. The Apex just doesn't have it. But luckily, or not luckily at all, they booked like 16 more events for the Apex. Come on, stop it. We're done. It's done. It's not fun.
It had a purpose.
Yes.
Over the sort of lockdown period, over COVID and coronavirus and restrictions and getting fighters in and out and getting fighters to fight. Phenomenal facility for that purpose. We've seen that is no longer necessary. They do massive fight nights now. They do massive pay-per-views in packed out stadiums.
Yeah.
Returning to Fight Island is absolutely fine for me. Because,
I love Fight Island.
It was obviously sort of molded from the necessity of having an arena where fighters can fight during COVID, the pandemic and whatnot. But it's not the first time they'd ever gone to Abu Dhabi. They'd gone to Abu Dhabi years and years previously. There's clearly a market there. And for them to return, I think this will be their third or fourth year this year in October. It clearly works. Fighters are willing to go over to Fight Island, Abu Dhabi, and fight. And, that works. The Apex is no longer fit for purpose because we've seen for example, a sold-out O2 Arena for a pay-per-view and a fight. We don't have time to touch on it now, but that July card, there are thousands of tickets not sold out yet for the UFC. We could go on now and buy a ticket.
It's a bad sign.
This is what happens when you don't put on competitive fights on a fight night card in an arena at the same price as Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman, Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev.
Yeah.
You're now paying for Molly McCann versus a bantamweight who can barely make bantamweight, who's trying to boil down to flyweight. Or Tom Aspinall's return against Martin Tybura, a guy who has, with respect, no business being in there with Tom Aspinall. But, that's an argument for another day. We'll go on to talk about that closer, the week prior to UFC London. But the Apex just doesn't... Don't get me wrong, the fights this weekend, Amir Albazi versus Kai Kara France, phenomenal fight. Yeah. Lots of talking points coming out of it. How much better would that have been in front of a packed crowd? Jim Miller's knockout in 23, I think that's the fastest knockout of his career in his 108th fight.
Yep.
How much better would that have been in front of a packed out crowd? Considerably better, and I can tell you that for free. But like you said, I think it came out last week. MMA Kings came out and said, the UFC have booked another at least 5, I saw, Apex cards for the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. You can't tell me the UFC can't find 5 arenas around. I mean, they've already booked to go back to Paris in September. You can't tell me that they can't find 5 more arenas across the world, let alone just the US to put on these fight nights cards. But, it is what it is.
Man, Bellator's selling out casinos and stuff like that. Even if it's 5,000 people, I don't get it. The UFC has to be making more money from live ticket sales than just doing it in their own backyard. And I get that it's, like you said, it had a purpose. But yeah, let's talk about Jim Miller now, holding the record from total fights in the UFC and most wins of any fighter, any weight class of any time in UFC history. He now has 25 career octagon wins, UFC 100, UFC 200, and we're on track for UFC 300 at this point. He's had 42 fights in the UFC alone. That's insane. That is absolutely incredible. We talk about some legends like Cain Velasquez, who has a total fight career of like 15 fights. Jim Miller has 42 fights in the UFC. He just got a first round knockout this weekend. What do you say about a guy like this?
I mean, and he's not slowing down. He this year he's had 2 fights in 2022, 2 fights in 2021, 3 fights in 2020. This guy's it's not like he's a 1 a year fighter. He fights in January, then he fights in the January after, or he fights in January and December. He's having 2 to 3 fights a year. And that's not, he fought on, June 3rd?
Yeah.
A second fight of the year. Jim Miller's got 2 more fights this year. In theory, he's got 2 more fights this year. He can fight in August and he can fight in December. And then I want him to sit out until next year. Headline, UFC 300. Okay, let's not be around the bush. He's never going to be a title contender.
No.
Who cares?
I know.
Who cares? For me, rebook the Jared Gordon sort of fight, or I say rematch, but it's rebook the Jared Gordon fight.
Sure.
Get him on the return to Madison Square Garden for the 30th anniversary show in November. Maybe you will only have 3 fights this year, but book him on that. He deserves it. He's one of the, he took a fight. He's well within his right to say, look, you guys didn't do the protocol. Pay me what I sort of deserve. Pay me my show money, and I'm not going to take a fight because the guy pulled out on 2 days' notice because you guys didn't do your protocol. Mm-hmm. No, he takes not only a replacement fighter, but a UFC debutant. He doesn't. Let's be honest. He didn't know anything. Was it Jesse Butler? He didn't know anything about Jesse Butler because, with the greatest respect, neither did we. And we're in the sport. We watch the regional shows. Jim Miller doesn't have time to watch the regional shows.
No.
But like you said, the guy is not slowing down. I want to see the Jared Gordon fight because I thought that would be a really competitive fight. But, I was so happy for him, and to get a win in the way that he did in 23 seconds, I think he clipped Butler. Butler never really recovered, and then he just slept him. And, Miller's never been known to have that devastating sort of, brain-shattering power. And yet he's shown it in his 40-second fight.
Yep.
Crazy.
I know. I don't know what to say about a guy like this. His career has defied all logic. Like when he lost to Gray Maynard, he was fighting guys like Matt Wyman. He had an early career loss to like a 19-year-old Charles Oliveira. I wouldn't have expected him to have this longevity compared to the Donald Cerrones and Anthony Pettis's of the middle class. You know what I mean? But good for him and good on him. What else do you want to talk about before we jump into the main event? And then we'll really sink our teeth into that one.
I think the only real talking point is the main event. We obviously had the I say impressive, but it was horrible. The knee bar by Karen Silva over Souza.
You got to tap to knee bars fast. You can't. That's a career changing. She's out for a year at least.
At very least. And I mean, Silva, she's a contender in this division now. You know, she won on the Contender Series. She got a first round D'Arce choke against Poliana Botelho in a UFC debut.
Mm-hmm.
Now getting a first round knee bar, and like you say, for Souza, UFC debut, and she's UFC debut, and now she's out for 9 months, 12 months, year and a half, depending on how that. Like you said, no one, it's not. Maybe with an armbar, with a choke, you go out. Not with a knee bar. You don't walk for 6 months with a knee. The knee. It was both beautiful and horrible in the same sentence. But I think that was the only other talking point aside from the. I don't know. I don't want to say robbery. It's not a robbery. This fight, the main event, was not a robbery.
No.
Controversial, not a robbery.
Yeah, the narrative around this one, especially seeing the results on Twitter before seeing the actual fight, made me think this is some insane robbery. Having watched the fight, the wrong guy won, but robbery's the wrong turn. You can easily find 2 rounds for each man. The 4th round probably should have been for Kai Kara France, but if you judged it the other way, Look, here's the thing. Kai Kara France needs to do stuff that the judges like. And I hate to say this in MMA this late in the game, but judges... We should be talking about most effective striking overall. Judges don't really know that. Judges are old guys who've been around for 50 years who don't really know what they're watching. And it sucks to say that. So we should be replacing the judges with younger people who know what they're watching. But that's just not the case. Every round, he was giving up ground in the octagon while still landing more strikes. The only round that he clearly won on every single judge's scorecard was the 5th round when he was taking the center of the octagon and landing more strikes. So octagon control doesn't matter, except when the judges don't know what the rules are, don't understand. So obviously the problem is the judges. And it's been this way forever. It's not been about what the fighters are doing or what's clarified in the rules. We need better judges to see what's going on here. And especially when it makes a difference of not just a win-loss. He said he lost $100,000 for that 4th round difference. That's just awful, man. 5 minutes for losing $100,000. Come on. Anyway, what do you think? What do you think of the match, and what do you think of judges overall?
Look, the fight itself was. I really enjoyed the fight itself.
Great fight.
It was competitive, and this is what we need. You know, matchmakers got it right. Yes, Albazi hadn't really fought anybody of that level prior to Kai Kara France, and Kai Kara France obviously coming off the interim title loss to Brandon Moreno.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a definite step backwards in competition to face Amir Albazi, but that's what you have to do when you're coming off a loss. With that being said, I completely co-sign with everything that you just said about judging. You know, we have judges for a reason, to make the fight fair.
Yeah.
If 2 men cannot be separated or 2 women cannot be separated after 15 or 25 minutes, the better person over that period of time gets the hand raised and wins the fight. This didn't happen on Saturday night, in my opinion. I had Kai Kara France 3-2. And there's even more of an argument for Kai Kara France 4-1 than there is Amir Albazi 3-2.
Yeah.
I also have a massive problem with the stats. I know, judges don't look at stats. But the armchair pundit or the guy in the media like myself and you, we do have, we do. I'm extremely interested in stats, but the stats for this do not tell the story of the fight. I didn't see Kai Kara France landing double the amount of significant strikes than Amir Albazi. Amir Albazi officially landed 43 significant strikes. Kai Kara France landed 99.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't see that. I don't know where that came from. And the same with total strikes. 133 total strikes landed for Kai Kara France, 64 for Amir Albazi. What was clear to me is the damage was being done by Albazi. The uppercut, I think it was uppercut, left hook, uppercut, right hook was landing for Albazi from the end of the first round through. Then, it was clear he wanted to get the fight to the ground, and he almost finished the fight. That, I think it was the third round, wasn't it, that he had the rear naked choke. That's a fight ending sequence. That's a lot of damage being done. And Kai Kara France, in my opinion, saved himself from a 10-8 because he rallied at the end of that round to really put it on Albazi, and I think he created a cut at the end of that round, and the last sort of 30 seconds saved him from a 10-8 there. But we have to I've seen a lot of stuff on social media, and we've got a piece out, I think Brian did it on MMASucka.com now, about sort of Twitter's reaction to the fight. It's a really interesting piece to see what the professional fighters are saying. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, I think a lot of casual fans are influenced by Israel Adesanya saying it's a massive robbery.
Yes.
But he's not happy with the result anyway, because it was a close fight, and it's gone against his teammate, against his friend. Of course he's going to be pissed off, but we've got to be really careful what we're calling a robbery. It's not a robbery. It's a close decision, and it's a controversial fight. It's not a robbery.
And I completely co-sign with you on that. Like, we're talking about one round in a very close fight, making all the difference. I do agree with you that it's not a robbery, but I still, even under different rules, if we talked about judging the fight as a whole rather than round by round, I still think you have to go with Kai Kara France. And yeah, not a robbery by any means. I mean, Amir Albazi fought his heart out, and he moves forward in a very competitive division and makes this division a lot more fun, a lot more interesting. But yeah, I agree with you that Israel Adesanya really did change the tone of the conversation. And you know what? That's fine. If you're going to attack some judges, these ones, I think it was Sal D'Amato, and I forget the other guys, but they consistently put in bad results. If you were going to attack any judges, these were probably the ones who deserve it. And he's just going for his guy. He's supporting the guy that he trains with, and that's fine. But yeah, now we got to really, really talk about robberies for the next few months about this. But hopefully, the thing is, the UFC hasn't done anything. I mean, we've complained about judges for decades. Even this year, we've had multiple robberies, multiple massive storms on Twitter, storms on Reddit, storms on Instagram. UFC doesn't care, and they haven't done anything. Is there anything that we can do? Like, Israel Adesanya is actually doing the right thing of making us have this conversation, making us maybe write into the athletic commission. But it just seems like there's nothing's going to happen. Sometimes people just get robbed. Stop me when I'm wrong here, right?
It's so difficult, because from my understanding, the UFC are not picking these judges. It's right. The Las Vegas Athletic Commission. At the weekend, it was Vancouver Athletic Commission, for want of a better phrase. In boxing, it's the British Boxing Board of Control pick the judges, pick the referees for these fights, and that's fine. But the credibility of these athletic commissions are now being sort of thrown into disrepute because of these consistently bad scorecards.
Yep.
What I will say is that there needs to be some accountability. I think the most famous example of awful judging was Adelaide Bird, Golovkin versus Canelo, and she was hounded, and yet she was still on the judging panel for the second or third fight, from my understanding.
Yes.
She judges MMA now. We need specific MMA judges for MMA fights that know what they want. You can't have the same person on a Friday night judging a boxing show where it's exclusively punches to the head, punches to the body, and then that same person is then judging a grappling match, essentially, in an MMA fight, with leg kicks, head kicks, body kicks, teeps, clinch work, elbows, knee. They're combat sports they're under the banner of combat sports, but they're completely different. And you can't have the same person judging boxing one week, MMA the next, then boxing, then MMA. They're just different sports. But also, we need to have the accountability. These people need to come out and say, sit down with an Ariel Helwani, sit down with a Luke Thomas and a Brian Campbell, sit down with Tim Wheaton and Frazer Krohn and say, look, I'm going to try and get in contact with someone who does judge MMA or a referee or something, and say, look, Amir Albazi versus Kai Kara France. Round one, you scored it for Kai Kara France. Why was that?
Yeah.
He had more effective striking. He controlled the octagon. The duration of his dominance was longer than Albazi's. Fine, suits me. Now, round three, the other way. Albazi had fight ending sequence, far more damage, control in time, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's it. Now, round four, how did you see that for Amir Albazi in comparison to how you saw it for Kai Kara France? What were the sort of pointers that you were looking out for Kai Kara France over Amir Albazi or vice versa?
Yeah.
Amir Albazi landed the biggest strikes, although Kai Kara France maybe doubled up on him. Amir Albazi landed 5 significant potential fight-ending strikes, whereas Kai Kara France landed 20 jabs.
I get it.
And I'm fine with that. As long as they come out and say, this is what I saw, I'm more than okay with that. But they need to come out and explain what they saw, how they saw it, and why maybe, they saw it differently to another judge that is sat essentially. I know they're sat sort of around the octagon, but they're essentially sat in the exact same position. And they're getting such different cards. We need an explanation, but it's frustrating because it was such a good fight, and now we're just talking about.
Yeah, I know. It was a great fight. It was a really good fight. I'm what's next for Amir at this point? He's proven he's probably top 5 in this division, even with a loss. I can make the argument that he's probably top 5 in a very competitive and quite a good division. Let's bring up the rankings here and see who do you play matchmaker. What do you think?
I saw this morning that he's now number 3. So you've got obviously champion Moreno, you got Figueiredo, Pantoja, and then Amir Albazi, from my understanding.
Amazing. Yeah. Pantoja.
Perez is still in these rankings.
Yeah.
Hasn't fought since, 2011 and pulled out of 14 consecutive fights. But
I know.
But the thing is, now Albazi's got a good opportunity to say, I'm next for the winner in July. I'm next in November, December, and it's going to be hard. With the greatest respect, no one wants to see Figueiredo Moreno 12.
No, I'm good.
Pantoja is the one that's fighting Moreno. Depending on how that fight goes, even if Pantoja wins that one, I can't see Moreno wanting to go into a trilogy fight with Pantoja having been, 2-0 down, as it were. I'd book a Kai Kara France rematch with Amir Albazi. What's the worst it can? If Albazi genuinely thinks he won that one, well, he can do it again. Book that for August, and then the winner of that one is the number 1 contender. For Kai Kara France next, I don't think they will, but the rematch for Kai Kara France next year, I think you maybe look at a Manal Cap, and Alex Perez, Brandon Royval coming off a big win. I think they fought before, but I think that would be a good fight. It's difficult for Kai Kara France now because, so Brandon Royval and Kai Kara France have fought before back in 2020, but the guys are now at different places in their career, Brandon Royval enjoyed a 3-fight winning run, 2 finishes on the spin, and Kai Kara France is a higher ranked guy, I believe, but coming off the losses, so that one could make sense.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun division. What an odd division this has been since Demetrius Johnson has left. It's just been a weird one. Everything about this has just been odd. Nothing has made sense here. Manel Cap is ranked number 9. Sorry?
If it wasn't for Henry Cejudo, we probably wouldn't be having the conversation. The flyweight division would be cut, and now look at it; it's one of the most competitive divisions in the sport.
It is very competitive, no doubt about it. So thank you, Mr. Henry Cejudo, again for your service. Oh, and one thing on judges, because you did say it's crazy that we got people out here judging boxing fights and then judging MMA fights in the UFC. Yeah, it is weird. It's like if you had Olympic judo judges, and then you also had those same guys you judge Olympic judo. Why don't you go do boxing as well? Of course, that wouldn't make sense. But that's essentially what we're asking these judges to do. You're going to have to judge Olympic.
Sumo, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know sumo doesn't tend to go to sort of a judge, as it were. But, you see a lot of judo throws in sumo. And you're essentially asking them to score the same. Can you score a glory kickboxing fight and then an Olympic taekwondo? match.
No, that's
No,
insane.
because one is they're different sports. Can you judge a college wrestling match and then can you judge a jiu-jitsu match? No, because in jiu-jitsu you don't get any points for sort of controlling your opponent on the ground.
Yeah.
It's chalk and cheese, and yet, like you say, we have the same guys and girls doing it on a Friday night at a local show in Las Vegas, and then on a Saturday night in the Apex. It's impractical at this point.
I understand entirely, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Let's get into it. Upcoming this weekend, the UFC is back in Canada, long awaited to return to Vancouver. UFC 89. We have Amanda Nunes, the greatest of all time, will return facing Irene Aldana. But really, the main event that's getting everyone hyped, Beneil Dariush, still on the campaign trail to get his to get a title shot against Charles Oliveira, who's looking to get his title back. Frazer, let's start with the main event, and then we can get to the big boy main event. Am I right?
Yeah, you are certainly correct. I mean, I'm excited for Nunes Aldana. I think it's a much more competitive fight than the original fight between Nunes and Juliana Pena.
Yes,
Juliana Pena won the first fight, but that second fight was not even. I can't fathom how uncompetitive that fight was.
Yeah,
amateurish striking from Pena saw her be just dominated by Nunes. I rewatched the fight the other day, one day last week, and it's just chalk and cheese as to the boxing ability of Pena and the boxing ability of Irene Aldana, who I do think is going to cause Amanda Nunes some problems. I am picking Nunes to win purely based on resume, but Irene Aldana is legit. She gets knockouts from crazy angles against Macy Chiasson, you know, that sort of axe kick from the bottom into the liver, and you know,
that was a good one.
She gets the hook knockout of Ketlin Vieira. She's got knockout power in both her hands and her feet. Where I think she sort of lacks is a bit of size and a bit of sort of ground knowledge. You know, we saw her dominated by Holly Holm on the ground. Holly Holm's not exactly a jiu-jitsu whiz. I think she's there to be pushed up against the cage by Amanda Nunes, drawn out, making quite a boring. I can see this one going 25 minutes and Nunes retaining in quite a boring fight, but it also has the potential to really catch fire, really be a fun fight. I don't think it will be, unfortunately, just because, you know, Nunes is not going to want to take that risk of losing the belt, picking the belt back up and losing the belt again. I think she's going to play it quite safe against arguably one of the best boxers in the division. I think I think there's a massive argument for that. I know Holly Holm's still in the division, but she's very much molded into a kickboxer after her boxing career, and you know, uses kickboxing and MMA. Irene Aldana's got some of the best hands in the division, and I think it's a really exciting fight. And it's finally for Amanda Nunes, it's a fresh fight. You know, we don't want to see Raquel Pennington 2. We don't want to see Juliana Pena 3. We don't want to see Holly Holm 2. We don't want to see her face nobodies at 145 that they don't have a chance. I've got a piece coming out on the site later this week. Amanda Nunes top 5 finishes. Mm-hmm. I rewatched the Megan Anderson fight. Thank God that was only 2 or 3 minutes long, because the Megan Anderson was never in that fight. From the moment she signed the fight, she wasn't in the fight. Then she lost the press conference psychologically. That famous image of her walking into the arena, she looks terrified. And I'm not taking anything away from Megan Anderson. Props for stepping in there.
Yeah. But
she never had a chance in this one. Irene Aldana will not be intimidated by Amanda Nunes. She'll go in there thinking, we've got Yair Rodriguez competing for the interim. We've got to compete for the undisputed Mexican.
Yep.
Mexican, Alexa Grasso, who she trains with, flyweight champion of the world, shot the world. Why can't I do it? And I really do think that Irene Aldana has a good chance. I think it will be Amanda Nunes' night.
Yeah.
I really do think that Irene Aldana has a good chance to win this one.
Yeah, I mean, Amanda Nunes is even though she is the greatest female, probably over 2 divisions at this point, and the greatest female fighter of all time, she is actually past her prime at this point. Physically, she is not quite what she used to be, especially going back and watching like her Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey fights. Like, holy crap, she was insanely athletic at that time. I think that has faded a little bit, but if someone does start putting it on her, she gets defensive. Like she did against Valentina Shevchenko. I'm just going to cruise. I'll land a couple of things, but you're not going to be able to touch me. And I do wonder if Irene Aldana will be able to cage cut effectively enough. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm not overly confident in Aldana. I don't think that's a safe bet. I mean, look, I hate to say it, but do you think Amanda Nunes wins via boring decision or knockout?
Boring decision, I'm afraid. I don't see Aldana getting knocked out. She's Mexican, they're notorious for their granite chins. We've seen Yair Rodriguez take some phenomenal licks in his career. We've seen, Alexa Grasso take some big shots in her career. We've seen Aldana take some big shots in her career. Mm-hmm. Don't see her being knocked out by Nunes, because I think the problem with Nunes against Pena the first time is that she let her ego get the better of her. She was tagged in that fight, and she said, "Right, no, I'm the vicious hitter. I'm the heavy hitter. I'm the one with the hands of stone. You're tagging me, and people that making the crowd go wild. I'm just going to swing back at you and let you know what I'm about." She let her ego get the better of her. She tried to fight fire with fire, and it just wasn't her night. Mm-hmm. In the second fight, even though she was tagged, okay, yeah, you tagged me, I'm going to reset. I'm going to catch you coming in, because now you're getting a bit more confident that you're sort of backing me up, as it were. Phenomenal performance. I think, I just pull the scorecards up quickly, because I really want to ride home how dominant that was. 50-44, 50-43, and 50-45. 50-43 in a title fight is a shocking scorecard. Yeah. And that's because she dropped the ego. She left the ego in the dressing room. She came out, she just fought her fight. She knows she was a better fighter than Juliana Pena, and she just fought her fight. Now, if she can leave that ego in the dressing room again against Irene Aldana, I think she'll get it done. I don't think she'll get into, Ketlen Vieira got into the swinging match, as it were, with Irene Aldana, and ended up literally knocked out cold. I don't think Amanda Nunes is going to do that. I think she's too smart. I agree with you that she's past her athletic prime. Yeah. And I think she could arguably still be in her athletic prime if she hadn't constantly gone up to 145 and then come back down, and then gone up again and then come back down. If you look, like you say, against Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate at UFC 200, she's lean. She's almost skinny. Yes. Now, she does look a little bit fleshy when she goes in there. It's because she's blowing up to 145 and then coming back down and blowing up to 140. But let's be honest, she's weighing in at 145. She's stepping in there at 155, 160. And then she's having to cut all the way down to 130. I know her last few fights have been down at 135, so it's more of a lifestyle change at the moment. But, it does have an effect on the body. And we've seen it with multiple fighters. And Amanda Nunes, unfortunately, although she's, like you say, probably the greatest of all time across 2 weight divisions. Yeah. Father time waits for no man, as it were, or no woman in this, or no lioness in this case. And, she's got endeavour. She obviously moved gyms before her last fight. She's got a young daughter. She's got another daughter on the way. Nina, her partner, her wife now, is retired from MMA, so she hasn't got her in the gym every single day pushing her. So, she's got a lot of outside the octagon factors. I'm not sure how old Nunes is. I think she's, 30s. She's sort of mid to late 30s. So she's born 1980. She's got 34, 35. How much left has she got to prove? If she goes out with a big win in Canada, I think maybe they book her headline in Brazil next January, or if they go to Brazil later on in the year. And I think she calls it a day. She's got nothing left to prove. She's got all the money that she can want. She's headlined a handful of pay-per-views. She's dominated everyone that she's ever faced, including Juliana Pena, who obviously upset her back in I think it was July of last year. Mm-hmm. She's got nothing left to prove to anybody. She's, like you said, the greatest of all time, and now she's still not. I think Aldana has a massive chance to become champion, but just maybe not on Saturday night. And I completely co-sign with you on that on all points. Yeah, Amanda Nunes, she can't have more than 1 or 2 fights left in her career. I think she has made that pretty obvious at this point. But let's move forward. Let's move forward to the main event, the one that everyone's talking about. Beneil Dariush
versus Charles Oliveira. This is a great fight in a great lightweight division. Two guys who are never in boring matchups are going to be facing off. I'll set the table a little bit with some of the videos, the video study that I was watching. Charles Oliveira, great signature left hook, great teep body kick, very shute box kind of guy. Of course, world-class jiu-jitsu. Beneil Dariush, similarly world-class jiu-jitsu. Charles Oliveira has not fought a lot of southpaws in his career. I believe he fought David Teemer several years ago, was struggling in that fight before winning via knockout. More recently, he fought Islam Makhachev, who was a southpaw. He didn't lose that fight because Islam Makhachev was a southpaw. That was not the important part of that fight. But he doesn't fight a ton of southpaws. Beneil Dariush, of course, fights mainly against, as a southpaw, he fights mainly orthodox fighters. He's got a great low kick into head combination. A few things I don't love about what Beneil Dariush does is that he's not doing slight head movement. He does deep head movement, not unlike the way Michael Chandler dodges into punches, and I could see that happening. What concerns me most is I do really see Charles Oliveira and his great snap down. If you are doing a deep head movement to avoid punches, you're putting your neck out there for a Charles Oliveira signature snap down. That's how I see this fight playing out, but I'm ready to be wrong. I'm ready for some scrambling. I'm ready for some real action here. Frazer, what do you make of this matchup?
No, completely. I think that's some brilliant analysis you've done now. You kind of forget that, in a way, you forget that Charles Oliveira isn't just relying on getting the fight to the floor to submit his opponents. You look at his record, he's got 10,000 submissions in the UFC or whatever his record is.
Yeah.
But how he gets those fights to the floor is, like you say, the snap down. He will jump guard. He probably will jump guard in this fight. He jumped guard against Islam Makhachev from what I remember.
Yeah.
Gaethje, Poirier, Chandler, he knocked them all down. Poirier, I can't quite remember, but Gaethje and Chandler, without a doubt, he knocked them down because of his work on the feet. Now, yes, he's only got three knockout sort of wins in his career, but that doesn't tell the story of how heavy his hands are. You know, he all but sort of, you know, he pretty much knocked Justin Gaethje out, and as Gaethje was on his way, sort of just coming around, he snatched the neck, and finally this fight is happening because it was supposed to happen last month, I believe, the co-main event or one of the fights on the card at least, and obviously he had to get rebooked. Charles Oliveira had an injury. Mm-hmm. So glad that injury hasn't kept him out for a couple of months, and we could just literally rebook this fight for the next pay-per-view. Beneil Dariush, you're only as good as your last performance. Beneil Dariush's last performance, I think, was the best of his career. Yes, he didn't get the knockout, but Mateusz Gamrot constantly shooting on him, and he hurt Gamrot. I think he dropped Gamrot in that one. Beneil Dariush is just so underrated. I think he's got a slick ground game that people underrate. He's got very, very good boxing. It's because I think he seems, when he kicks, he seems stiff, but there's clearly power in those kicks. And I really do think that Beneil Dariush, I think there's going to be a lot of people picking Beneil Dariush in this one. Yes. You can't forget what Charles Oliveira did and who Charles Oliveira's beaten and who Charles Oliveira lost to. Islam Makhachev. There's no shame in that whatsoever.
No.
I'm so happy this fight's going down. I've got a piece coming out, I think, today, essentially previewing this fight, but just saying, look, the next guy to face Islam Makhachev will be fighting on Saturday night, and it is going to either be Charles Oliveira or Beneil Dariush, and that will go down in October in Abu Dhabi, and it will be the main event, I believe. Oh, I'm so excited for this one, and I'm going back and forward on it at the moment. I think I'm going to go Charles Oliveira, but I think Beneil Dariush is going to be a lot bigger than Charles Oliveira in there on the night. Let's not forget, although he missed weight, a lot, Charles Oliveira was a featherweight. Beneil Dariush should never make it featherweight. And yes, Charles Oliveira is very much grown into a lightweight frame of his now. Mm-hmm. Beneil Dariush is naturally the bigger guy. I think he's going to be naturally the stronger guy. And what I am slightly afraid of is that Beneil Dariush can use his sort of mauling jiu-jitsu game, like he did against Tony Ferguson, take the fight to the ground and almost just rely on Charles Oliveira, not put himself in any danger, and win the fight just through duration of dominance on the ground rather than damage, as well. praying to the MMA gods that we don't sit here next week and talk about judging. But I can see Beneil Dariush. At the end of the day, it's hard to deny someone a title shot when they've won, what, 5 straight? I think Beneil Dariush is. Oh, no, way more than that.
Oh, he's winning. Yeah. That's a great win streak, isn't it?
If he beats Charles, it'll be his 9th straight. So it's hard to deny, especially when the division is looking a little bit thin with regards to people who aren't booked in a fight. We've got Poirier and Gaethje booked, McGregor and Chandler all but booked. Charles Oliveira would have obviously be coming off 2 losses if he loses this one. Mm-hmm. Then you drop down to the Mateus Gamrot, Rafael Fiziev of this world that are both coming off, like Gamrot's coming off a win against Turner, but Fiziev's coming off that loss against Justin Gaethje. The next contender is coming from this fight, and it's pretty clear to see.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, as confident as I am in Charles Oliveira, I also recognize the chaos energy that both of these guys bring into fights. Like Beneil Dariush gets hit all the time in fights. He's almost getting knocked down. Charles Oliveira gets knocked down all the time and just welcomes people into his guard. These are consistent things that happen every fight. So I think in a weird way, in the same way that with like Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya, if they fought 10 times, you get 10 different knockouts. I genuinely think there's not a great way to see who is a better fighter between Beneil Dariush and Charles Oliveira. They could fight 9 times and you get 9 different weird results.
Actually, over 3 rounds. This is only a 3-round fight.
Ooh, yeah, I don't love it.
It's only a 3-round fight, but like you say, one fight I don't think will be enough, let alone only be a maximum of 15 minutes long.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I completely co-sign with you on that. And hopefully, do you think, man, there's just such a king at the top in Islam Makhachev. Like, I don't think these two will rematch for a title shot next year, but I don't know. I mean, they won't rematch for a championship next year. They may be rematching for a title shot next year. I'm not sure, but it's going to be it's going to be a fun fight. Last word. What do you think? What do you make of it?
I'm going to go Charles narrowly.
Okay.
I just think that his level of competition, you look at Charles's last sort of 3 or 4 fights, you've got Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and then obviously he lost to Makhachev. Mm-hmm. You look at Beneil Dariush's last 5 fights, with the greatest respect, Frank Camacho, Drakkar Klose, Scott Holtzman, Diego Ferreira, then he obviously had Tony Ferguson, then a Mateus Gamrot, and he obviously had all that time out for I think he broke his leg, didn't he? Just strength of schedule, high-level competition. I'm narrowly picking Charles Oliveira, but I'm not. It's not one that I'm betting the house on.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I completely agree with you. Let's rapid fire a few of these ones. The UFC looks like they wanted to get the Canadian Mike Mallet a nice easy win in the welterweight division. Mike Mallet on a 3 first-round finishes against a guy who has 1 win and 1 loss in the UFC, Adam Fugit. What do you make of Mallet versus Fugit?
Yeah, I'm here for it. I think Mike Mallet has got quite a high ceiling. Will he be a champion? I'm not so sure, but Canadian on a main card in Canada, he's earned it. 3 first-round finishes and returning to Canada. I think it's timing's really good for Mike Mallet, and I think his timing's even better for a first-round KO.
I agree with you on that one. Dan Ige versus Nate Landwehr. That's just going to be chaos incarnate. But yeah, Dan Ige is the sharper fighter of the two.
Oh, without a doubt. But, Nate Landwehr got a piece coming out today. Nate Landwehr's sort of opportunity to crack the top 15 with a win over Dan Ige. Ige obviously got that really important victory last time out against Damon Jackson because he was staring down the barrel, 4 straight losses.
Yeah.
Really fun fight, I think. And, there's everyone's sort of bashing this card. It's not a bad card. I don't like this card. Yes, it maybe doesn't have that, aside from the co-main event, it doesn't have those really big names. But, we're gutted to have lost the Khalil Roundtree. I've got a piece up on the site at the moment. Khalil Roundtree needed a replacement fight. And I don't think he's going to get it this week when Chris Daukaus sort of dropped out. But this is what kind of frustrates me with the UFC. They filled in at Jared Gordon on 2 days' notice for Jim Miller. They got a replacement fighter for Jamie Mullarkey. Mm-hmm. With a week and a half notice, they can't get a replacement fighter for Khalil Roundtree. He's gone through his camp. Let's be honest, he's gone through his camp. That last week was the week that you slow down, as it were, and he's gone through his camp and he doesn't get a replacement fighter. I hope he's sort of getting some compensation for that, but it is what it is.
I hope he gets compensation as well. I doubt that though, but anyway, go ahead.
Exactly. But, you've got, Nasruddin Imanov versus Chris Curtis. I think that's going to be a really fun fight.
Great fight.
Marco Barrio versus Eric Anders. I think it's really going to be a really fun fight. And the women's flyweights, Orlando Maverick returns. I don't quite understand this fight. Jasmine Justavicius. She's going to be known as Jasmine on this show.
Jasmine.
but no, she's. I think the reason that she's gotten this opportunity is because she's Canadian, straight up. But Miranda Maverick, in my opinion, she did lose to Erin Blanchfield. I mean, which is a loss that's kind of aged quite well for Miranda Maverick, because Erin Blanchfield has obviously gone on to be in the title conversation, let alone just be at the top of the division. But for me, I would have expected Miranda Maverick to maybe fight up the division. She's ranked number 15 now. I would have expected to fight up the division rather than down to a non-ranked fighter who, if Jasmine wins this one, she's on a 2-fight win streak and in the top 15. I don't quite understand that, but I'm here for it. I think it's a fun fight. I've got a piece coming out looking at that fight later on this week as well. So, keep it locked to MMA Sucka, because there's a lot of content out this week about UFC 289.
Absolutely. Links will be down below. Okay, that's the only thing I see from 289 that I wanted to talk about. But yeah, I do really like the Jasmine Justavicius versus Miranda Maverick fight. Like, I both of them are great. They're both fun. I like both. Anything else on this card before we move forward to the final point?
I think that's about all we're looking at this guy. It's certainly one not to be missed. It hasn't got the blockbuster name, that co-main event and that main event, and with the skills that the guys and girls have lit throughout the card. It's certainly not one to be missed. But it's not, granted, it's not that it's not UFC 290 that's coming at the beginning of next month. That is absolutely stacked top to bottom with some of the best fights we're going to see this year.
Yeah, this is a good card. I'm not sure about $90 worth of fight action though, but yes, it is a good card. Okay, help me out a little bit here. So Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez is facing off this weekend. Now this is a good boxing fight. I believe the WBO and the ring, so the lineal title will be on the line in this one. Teofimo Lopez, a couple fights removed from his George Kambosos shocking loss. Help me out with this fight. What are the stakes? What's going on in this one? Help me out here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, like you say, it's a couple of fights removed from that George Kambosos loss that was down at lightweight. He's obviously moved up to super lightweight. Blitzed through Pedro Campa in his first fight. And then he looked a bit flat against Sander Martin at the tail end of last year. I know he had some problems outside of the octagon. Sander Martin was obviously a replacement fighter. He's supposed to be fighting Jose Pedraza. Josh Taylor is potentially the best boxer that we have from the UK. Obviously, Scottish native. He's potentially the best boxer that we have. And yet, people seem to forget that Josh Taylor is as good as he is. And it's all down to that Jack Catchell fight. We spoke about it in huge length. That was corrupt. It was a robbery. It was the mob was involved in that one, as it were, the sort of Irish mob, and we won't go into it. I'll try and find the podcast below, and we'll link it when we went into big detail in that. Josh Taylor lost his last fight against Jack Catchell and got his hand raised. Now we were speaking about judging earlier. We talked about robberies. That was a corrupt judging robbery. But this is a huge fight that nobody seems to be talking about, and I'm not going to lie and say that I've listened to a whole lot of these guys talking. This is a massive, for Josh Taylor, Teofimo Lopez is arguably one of the best, probably the best fighter that he will have faced, aside from maybe a Regis Prograis or a Jack Catchell. But for Teo, again, Josh Taylor is probably the best guy that Teo will have faced in his career thus far, aside from Vasyl Lomachenko. Although he lost to George Kambosos obviously lost twice now to Devin Haney. The super lightweight division and the lightweight division, the hottest divisions in boxing at the moment. You've got the heavyweights all flirting around each other, not really wanting to fight each other, which is just, I think, pissing everybody off at this point. These guys are fighting each other, and it is So good to see. Whatever happens in this one, Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez. I'm not quite sure where this is going down. So it's in New York, so it's in, Tio's sort of adopted homeland, I believe. I believe he was born in New York, in Brooklyn, and fights out of Vegas. Josh Taylor stepping into enemy territory, and it is a massive fight. I've purposefully not included this one. Not included this one in my weekend best bets because I don't have a clue how this one's going to go. I'll pick Sonny Edwards to win by a decision because Sonny Edwards is going to win by a decision in the UK. I've picked Brendan Loughnane by knockout in the PFL because Brendan Loughnane will win by knockout in the PFL. I picked Mike Malott by knockout, I believe, because Mike Malott will win by knockout. I haven't touched it because I do not know how this one's going to go, and I want to make you guys some money. I do not know how this one's going to go, so I thought it best is to completely leave it out. We'll go. In the world of MMA, we've got the PFL to look at next week to break down. We've got UFC to break down. We've got the UFC to preview. I think for the next 4 months or for the next 6. There's a UFC card every week now for a prolonged period of time. I can't remember the amount of time, but rest assured, there's plenty to preview. So we won't be able to touch too much on this fight, but I'll watch it on Sunday, and we'll talk about it on Monday for sure.
No, co-sign with that. That sounds good. What's going on with the PFL this weekend? What do we got?
So we've got the second round of the tournament. I think it's this week. This week on Thursday, the second round of the tournament, PFL 4. There's a bit of a shadow over the PFL at the moment, in my opinion, with all the drug aliens. Rob Wilkins now popping, Thiago Santos popping, Christoph Jokto, Will Ferry, all these guys popping. But one man that you're not going to see pop, and one man that, if you were to say has the engine of someone that could potentially pop is Brendan Loughnane. Headlining against Jesus Pinedo in what is essentially, yes, he's no longer the PFL champion, but let's be honest, he is the defending PFL champion. He doesn't walk in with the belt because it's a whole new. He's last year's winner. Yeah. This is a whole new year. It's a whole new tournament. Let's be honest, Brendan Loughnane is quickly becoming the face of the PFL. Aside from obviously Francis Ngannou, Kayla Harrison's only in for the sort of big pay-per-view fights, but Brendan Loughnane's competing this weekend. You've got a whole host of guys up and down the card that we've heard of. Friend of the show, Kasanganai is back in action. You got Chris Wade versus Rahila Kuda in a rematch from last year, I believe that is. I know those two guys haven't fought. I'm mistaken, but you got Bubba Jenkins on the card, Marlon Moraes, who is in desperate need of a win.
Yes.
But it's be sure to check out the PFL. I'll be watching it on Friday. Because PFL always put on a good show. So rest assured that it's certainly one to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I see Bubba Jenkins is back on it versus a Korean champion, which is pretty good. But yeah, I'm surprised to see Marlon Moraes back that quickly. I hope everything's okay with him. But
the nature of the PFL.
My God, look at that losing streak. That's 5 losses in a row. I don't know, Marlon. I don't know, man. I don't know about this one. Anyway, let's get out of here. Hey, Frazer Krohn, thanks so much for your time. For everyone else, links will be down below. Last word goes to you, Frazer. Lots coming out this week. Talk us on out of here.
Yeah, like you say, lots coming out on the site. Just keep it locked to MMA Sucka's Twitter and Instagram. I'll be constantly posting all the articles that go up. We've got staff picks, got UFC, PFL results. I've got plenty of previews, and I've got a weekend betting tips to cover you for PFL, the boxing, and the UFC. And then I've got a UFC specific, UFC 289 betting tips. Khalil Roundtree piece, Jasmine. We've called the Jasmine on the show. Nate Landwehr piece. Amanda Nunes, top 5 knockouts. And I'd encourage everyone to go and watch all those knockouts because they are phenomenal. But this time next week, we're going to be breaking down UFC 289, breaking down the boxing, previewing Vettori versus Cannonier in the most UFC middleweight main event ever. But, we'll break it down all the same because it's what we do on the MMA Sucka Podcast.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.